Just being around somebody deepens the relationship, because when you're around somebody, something psychological happens where you begin to trust them more. The relationship deepens just being around them. In the digital space, that becomes especially true, that trust is built through repeated exposure.
Welcome to the Propel Podcast, inspiration and innovation to grow your church. I'm your host, Larry Witzel. Seventh-day Adventist churches grow differently, and our goal with this podcast is to offer practical training for effective evangelism in the Adventist ministry context. Are you enjoying the Propel Podcast? Please leave us a review on your favorite platform. It helps more people to find the program. You can also email us at podcast@propelconference.org with your feedback. If you have an idea for the 2027 Propel Conference, if there's a topic you want to hear or a speaker, send us an email, podcast@propelconference.org. Thanks for being part of the movement for stronger church growth. Today's episode has another one of those awkward introductions because it features a presentation from me. I'm Larry Witzel. I'm the president of Sermon View, and I'm also the director of the Propel Conference. A little over a year ago, I earned my PhD in strategic media from Liberty University, where I focused my dissertation on parasocial relationships and digital evangelism. My passion lives at the intersection of technology, marketing, and ministry. At my core, I am a communicator. At Sermon View, for over 20 years now, we've helped churches connect with their communities through digital evangelism. Over the years, we've managed more than 7,500 marketing campaigns for 2,500 Seventh-day Adventist churches across North America, and I'm really proud of what the Sermon View crew has accomplished together over the last 2 decades. Now, in this particular presentation, I explore how churches can build meaningful connections and make disciples in an increasingly digital world. Drawing on years of experience in digital evangelism and research into online relationship building, I introduce a practical framework for helping churches move beyond simply having a digital presence to creating intentional pathways that lead people toward deeper engagement and discipleship. Rather than treating websites and social media and online content as isolated tools, this presentation shows how they all work together in the digital connection architecture to build trust, foster relationships, and guide people toward real-life spiritual community. I also share insights into the role of consistency, strategic communication, and emerging technologies like artificial intelligence in supporting ministry efforts. At its core, this presentation is a reminder that digital ministry is not about collecting clicks or followers. It's simply about helping people take their next step toward Jesus. We're going to get to the presentation in just a moment. First, though, I want to highlight the sponsor of this episode, Sermon View. Sermon View's mission is to help churches like yours make a greater impact in your community for Christ by equipping you with innovative tools for digital evangelism and outreach. Now, if you're planning an evangelistic series or a bridge event, Sermon View's multi-touch advertising approach is designed to bring more people through your doors. We can also turn your church website into an evangelistic engine, making it more visible in your local community. Plus, our video service provides personalized coaching to help you create impactful short-form videos that help you share Christ's message online. Over 2,500 churches have already transformed their outreach with Sermon View. If you're ready to take your ministry to the next level, visit sermonview.com to learn more about our powerful suite of tools and services. All right, with that, here's my presentation from the Digital Evangelism Breakout Track at the 2026 Propel Conference, and the title is Beyond Views and Clicks, a Strategic Framework for Digital Evangelism.
Everything about digital ministry will flow into this. When we get to it, it'll probably make a little bit more sense. But let me start with a story. Laura is a friend of mine. She grew up in the church. As she became a young adult, she kind of moved away from that. And she moved to a new town, got a new job. And she was feeling pulled to reconnect with spiritual roots. So she did a search for Bible study near me on Google and found a church that had a Bible study, went to their website, found out what it was, went to the Bible study, It was a young adult small group Bible study, and she engaged with them. One thing led to another. She's now actively involved in the life of my church at Oasis, and involved in the tech ministry. Laura found her church online. And that's the kind of digital ministry that we're going to be talking about in this presentation. Let's start by just quickly going over some facts about the digital transformation of society. 97% of Americans use the internet regularly. 72% use at least one social media platform every month. Anxiety among college students has jumped 134%. And research is showing that a lot of that, it's predominantly driven by social media use. 44% of teens feel anxious without their phones. 39% feel lonely. And here's the stat that should wake us up. In 2023, the average American adult spent 48% of their waking hours in the digital space. Fully half of their conscious life is spent in the digital space. Guys, today, digital presence is not optional. It is missional. We are missing half of people's lives if we are not fully present in the digital space. Okay, let's talk about the goal of digital ministry. A lot of times you hear about the goal, you hear, oh, we want, I want to be a social media influencer, or I want to get clicks and likes and follows and subscribes and all this stuff. Let's talk about the fundamental goal of digital ministry. The goal is to make disciples. We want people to become fully devoted disciples of Jesus who are actively engaged in the life of local church, who are making other disciples, right? So that's the goal. Anything less than that, and we're not done. So let's talk about the engine of digital ministry. So that's the goal. The engine of digital ministry today is trust and influence. You want to do things in the digital space that's going to lead people to trust you more so you can have more influence on them. And in terms of ministry, our goal is to deepen relationships in order to guide people on their spiritual journey. There's always a next step in your spiritual journey. And we want to always ask people to take that next step, whatever that is. So how is trust built? And this is true, especially true in the digital space, but it's also true in the in real life. Trust is built through repeated exposure. There's a study back in like the late 1960s that found that proximity, or actually what they call propinquity, is the number one driver of relationship building. Just being around somebody deepens the relationship. Because when you're around somebody, something psychological happens where you begin to trust them more, the relationship deepens just being around them. In the digital space, that becomes especially true. That trust is built through repeated exposure. And here's the key to what we're going to be talking about. If you don't control the environment, you can't control the repetition. So trust is built through repeated exposure. If you don't control the environment, you can't control the repetition. So let me explain that a little bit more. Let me divide digital media into two categories. We have controlled media that you control, and we have algorithm-dependent media, which is media that relies on an algorithm to deliver content to people. Your controlled media are things like your website, your email newsletter, your text messaging service, your live stream, your CRM or your contact database. These are your controlled media. And with this, you can control how often you're touching people in the digital space. With algorithm-dependent media, these are things like social media and search engine, organic search results, search engine advertising, your Google business listing. These things rely on an algorithm to deliver you to people online. Your controlled media should be your foundation for repetition. Your goal is to get people into your controlled media environment, because trust is built through repeated exposure. And in that controlled environment, you can control the repetition. Algorithm-dependent media, on the other hand, is how you reach new audiences. This is how people can discover you. This is how Laura found her church. She went on Google, did a search, actually found the Google business listing, clicked through, found information about it, and went from there. She used an algorithm-dependent medium in order to connect with a church that then led actually to an in-person. We'll talk more about that in a second. So controlled media versus algorithm-dependent media. Does that make sense? So again, trust is built through repeated exposure. And if you don't control the environment, you can't control the repetition. So let me tell you about digital connection architecture. This is a framework that I developed. Some of it came out of my dissertation. Some of it has just come from over 30 years of making websites and being involved in the digital space. The digital connection architecture is a tool for prioritizing what you do in the digital space. If everything is a priority, nothing is a priority. And so we want to use this tool to decide what's the next thing that you should do in your digital ministry to prioritize this. And spoiler alert, you want to build from the bottom up. So let's go through these 5 layers and let me explain what these are. Your foundation layer is the first layer. This is media that you control. We talked about controlled media. Your foundation of the digital connection architecture is the media you control. So this is your church website. Your church website needs to have a page specifically for guests that gives them an idea of what to expect when they walk through the door. You want your website to be a window into ministry. For a lot of churches, it's simply a digital bulletin. Your website primarily is for the people who haven't met you yet. Yes, your members need to be able to access some things in there. Yes, your leaders need to see the calendar and stuff like that. But primarily, the top thing on your homepage should be a great big button. Are you new here? Click here. And it takes you to a page that describes what the experience is going to be like walking through your doors. Fundamentally, your website is for people who have not yet met you. Your church, God created church for people who are not yet part of it. So make sure that your digital presence is keeping that philosophy in mind as well. Okay, so your website, it's a guest-focused website. One of my team members actually, when I went through this presentation, she sent me a message afterwards. It's like, you kept talking about guest-focused website. All websites are guest-focused. And I'm like, you haven't seen some of the church websites that I've seen. You have to be intentional about making it guest-focused. All right. A second thing in your foundation layer is your email newsletter. How often do you guys gather as a community? If your cadence is twice a week, your email newsletter needs to be going out twice a week. If your cadence is once a week, your email newsletter needs to be going out once a week. Is your Wednesday night for members or would it be guest friendly? So your email newsletter, the cadence of your newsletter needs to match the cadence of your gatherings in your community. So if you do your weekly worship service and that's your big gathering each week, you need an email newsletter that goes out every week. It should go out on Tuesday or Wednesday. And the newsletter your newsletter is not a bulletin, a digital bulletin that goes out. Yes, you can have announcements in there, but the most important thing at the top of the newsletter should be valuable spiritual content. You should take either what you talked about last week, or if you're actually planning ahead enough, take what you're talking about this upcoming weekend and turn it into a little devotional thought that stands on its own, that somebody could read and they would feel more connected to God. They would feel like it was drawing them into a relationship with Jesus. You want valuable spiritual content as the most prominent thing in your newsletter. And then you should have calls to action for guests. Hey, we would love to meet you this weekend. We have our service at 11 o'clock on Saturday morning. Join us for a small group at 9:30. Your newsletter primarily needs to be for guests first. And then below the fold, you might have some announcements for members. The morning watch books, it's like 3 or 4 paragraphs in the morning that there's a verse and a devotional thought. Take your sermon and turn it into a devotional thought. Again, spoiler alert, use AI to condense if you are writing a full sermon manuscript, stick it into AI and say, give me a 2-paragraph nugget from this, or give me 3 2-paragraph nuggets from this. And then we'll talk more about AI later on. Use the tools that are available. The other thing that you could do is take your live stream from your sermon. You can run it through tools today that will transcribe it and then drop that into AI and develop a draft of a spiritual nugget that you can use to send out. Never copy and paste. Use it as a first draft that you then tailor to be your voice, your message, because it's not going to get it right. But it accelerates the process. Okay. Does it? So, if you can do a video, that's great. But video, there's going to be you have to link from the newsletter to get to a video. So better to actually, when they open it up, they can see the content. All right. So your email newsletter should have valuable spiritual content that somebody who you're trying to reach in your community would read this every week, and they would start feeling more connected with you and being drawn to come to your church, because this is the type of experience that they're going to have. Text messaging service is really important today. And don't just add somebody to a text message list and randomly start sending them text. You should have a form on your website, which we'll talk about that later, but that they can check a box to get text messages. And then when you send out the email newsletter, do a 1-sentence summary, like the subject line, something that's draw people in, with a link that will take them to a web version of that email newsletter so they can get pinged and then click through to it to actually see the content. Text message open rates are dropping today, but they're still way higher than email. Your live stream is a tool that you can use. One of the things about live stream, I did a study in my PhD program that I looked at a number of variables that correlated with church growth. And one of the things that correlated with church growth was that churches that offered a live stream actually grew faster. And then we asked the question, why is that? Because a live stream, before somebody walks through the doors of your church, they want to know what is that experience going to be like. And watching a live stream is a poor, inadequate representation, but it's better than nothing. Somebody can go in and see and watch your most recent sermon and learn something about your church from that live stream. So you need to have a page on your website that has an archive of all of your past services and archive of the live streams. And then a CRM or a contact database. The Adventist Connect Thrive is an up and coming program. It's supported by the North American division. I would definitely talk with Marshall at the Adventist Connect booth or Brent about Thrive. You want to have a place where when you engage with somebody, you can take notes, because that expands your capacity for following it up with leads or with interests. If you're just doing it yourself, you have a maximum of 100 people that you can actually track with your brain, 250 at the very most. Using a CRM, you can track more than that, and you can distribute that to your other leaders so other people can see when somebody was contacted. So Thrive is one. Some of you also has a program called Interest Tracker that is available. That has text messaging built into it. It's got an email service built into it. So you could actually use something like Interest Tracker and send your emails from that. And then everybody that receives it, there's a note in their record to see that they received it. And same with text messaging. Okay. So the goal of your foundation layer is that you have a foundation of digital media that you control. Why do you need to control it? Because trust is built through repeated exposure. And if you don't control the environment, you can't control the repetition. So this is a foundation where you control the repetition. All right, second layer is visibility. This is about extending your reach to new audiences. This is the algorithm controlled or algorithm dependent media. So social media posts, social media advertising, search engine optimization, search advertising, your Google business listing. The goal with your visibility layer is to generate discovery and initial exposure. But what you are looking for is to do things with your content that are going to draw them into your controlled environment through certain calls to action. We'll talk more about progression in a second. All right. So visibility is the second layer. Your third layer, layer 3, is consistency. This is about reliable presence over time. Remember, trust is built through repetition. So consistency is about the repetition. And with this is where you create systems, develop systems to create content where you systematize what you're doing. So maybe it's you have somebody every Sabbath that takes a picture and writes a post about something that happened that Sabbath, and it gets posted, and you have a team of 2 or 3 people. And just like you have a greeter schedule, just like you have a potluck helper schedule, just like you have the platform elder schedule, you have your social media schedule where you have 3 or 4 people that their job is to take 1 or 2 pictures and post them throughout the week. That is a window into the life of your church. This is not about posting announcements. Hey, remember there's a potluck this Sabbath. This is about giving people an opportunity. Hey, last Sabbath we had a fellowship, we had a friendship lunch where people were able to engage with each other, and there's a picture, and or take a picture if it's a cornucopia of amazing food. Get a picture of the food that says, "Man, our meals at this church are amazing. We'll let you know when the next one is coming. Sign up for our email newsletter so we can let you know." All right. That's the type of thing. Okay. But consistency. This is about developing systems so that where you're consistently posting on social media, you're consistently sending out your email newsletter, you're consistently updating your website with content. It's about consistency, reliable repetition over time. This is where you look at tools to automate posts, to be able to schedule posts ahead of time. You should be posting on social media at least once a week with no weeks off. And if that's your cadence, that's great. 1 post a week, no weeks off. You do this consistently, reliably. This is where you develop systems for harvesting your sermon content, like we were talking about earlier. You are doing 90% of the work of a content creator in the digital space, because you are taking the ancient scripture and applying it to a contemporary situation in your community of faith. You're doing all of this work. It's a small step to then harvest that content in and putting it into a form, turn it into a blog post on your website, turn it into a nugget for your email newsletter, turn it into 3 social media posts. And this about developing systems to be able to do this consistently. Side note, there's no way that you can do this if you do it additive. You don't just say, "Oh, I'm going to do this as well." Remember, innovation is discipline subtraction. So if this is something that you're feeling compelled to do, you got to decide ahead of time, what am I not going to do in order to create space to be able to do these extra things? That's just a callback to earlier. So your goal here is to maintain repeated exposure over time. Layer 4 is progression. This is about intentional deepening of relationships. You want to develop clear pathways for someone to move from initial encounter into your controlled media environment, into an in-person engagement, into becoming a disciple. Progression. It's not just about building, getting, this person has a million followers on social media. That's great. And if someone's called to do that, and this is what they're called to do, that's great. I don't think that that's what churches are called to do. If you have 1 million followers on social media, that's great. It only matters if there's progression from social media into a life of discipleship. So This is about developing offers in order to capture contact info that then goes into the CRM, inviting them to sign up for an email newsletter, calls to action for whatever a next step looks like. In digital marketing, you hear about funnels or a funnel pipeline. This is about developing a funnel. We'll talk more about that in a second. Landing pages, so that when someone comes into your website from a link, there's only one, that page has one purpose, and there's only one call to action on it, and it only does one thing. That's a landing page. Your goal here is to move people from audience to relationship. Discipleship doesn't happen outside of the context of relationship. In order to build relationship, you have to have trust. In order to have trust, that comes from repeated exposure. And then your last layer, the layer 5, is optimization. This is about improving flow and conversion. One of the mistakes that I see people make is they start posting on social media and then they start talking about the engagement metrics. Hey, we had this many views of this video, or we have this many followers. Frankly, none of that matters until you get to the optimization stage. If you don't have consistency, if you don't have a progression defined, then who cares what the metrics are? The metrics are about helping you refine your progression so that it gets more effective over time. So this is about looking at engagement metrics, testing messages, traffic source analysis, click-through rates, funnel conversion rates. Your goal is to identify friction points in this pathway that you've developed, friction points that people are getting stuck here. And the metrics point that to you. And then you figure out ways to reduce that friction in that point. Okay, again, trust is built through repeated exposure. If you don't control the environment, you can't control the repetition. Let me share 3 common mistakes of people who have tried to implement the digital connection architecture. Actually, they're not implementing, they're just trying to do digital ministry. 3 mistakes of people that are just trying to do digital ministry. Okay, the first one is what I call the visibility trap. And that's starting with the reach layer instead of the foundation. If you don't have a foundation in place, end up with attention leakage. Visibility without that foundation leads to attention leakage. You want that attention to lead to getting people into your controlled environment. And once you can control that repetition, then drawing them into an in-person encounter. So the first mistake is the visibility trap, starting with reach instead of foundation. The second trap is funnel without familiarity. This is about pushing progression before the trust exists. Funnel without familiarity, trust requires repetition, and you're going to be more effective in that progression when trust exists. So if you try to short circuit it and build that progression before you have the consistency in place, before that trust has been built, then you're not going to be as effective. Frankly, most churches don't have this specific problem, funnel without because they don't have funds. But this would be a case where you run an ad for a Bible study that takes you into a landing page that invites you to request a Bible study, but they don't know anything about you. They haven't had a chance to see you out in the digital space. So now there are going to be cases where you have a progression that's built and someone they have to find you through the visibility layer. But it might be the first time that they ever saw a post from you, and it takes them to a landing page and they jump in with both feet and they go from there. That's rare because people need to trust. And what this mistake does is it makes it seem too commercial. Right. If somebody sees that you're running an ad and pushing you to do something, they're like, okay, what's the catch? What are you trying to sell me? Right. So that's the mistake, the funnel without familiarity. And then the third mistake is inconsistent presence. This is, by far the biggest mistake that people make. Where the foundation exists, you have foundation and you have visibility, but you're not actually doing anything consistently. Posting every week is going to be far more effective than creating 6 posts and running them every day and then disappearing for another 5 weeks. It's better. And frankly, I read one expert in this space said, if you're trying to start like a social media channel or whatever, don't post until you've written 3 months worth of content, because you want to, once you start, the consistency is so important. I actually argued with myself about whether to even talk about Witzel on the Way, because Witzel on the Way, that channel was great while it was happening. But at this point, there's no, there's consistency. I'm not doing anything with it. So in that regard, it's a terrible example of what you should be doing with visibility, because you're not doing it consistently. And before we made our first post with Witzel on the Way, we actually had 12 videos done before we made our first post. And we already had like the first 25 scripts were written. So trust cannot compound without predictable repetition. If somebody sees that you're posting twice a week, and then now the algorithm has to decide to actually show it to people. But if somebody is engaging with, for example, a short form video every time, then the algorithm is going to push it to them. And if you disappear and then you reappear after like a month, they're going to go, oh, wait, I haven't seen this. What happened? And then go to your channel and you didn't post anything for a month. Credibility becomes a little bit of a question there. So consistency is really important. Why? Because trust is built through repeated exposure. And if you don't control the environment, you can't control the repetition. Okay, I mentioned parasocial relationships in my talk this morning. I want to just dig into this a little bit more. Again, a parasocial relationship is the illusion of a relationship with immediate personality. It's a social connection that's one-sided. Here's the thing about parasocial. We're using a brain that was wired for connection in a digital space. And a parasocial connection leads to an emotional reaction that is very similar to an in-person connection. 52% of adults have a strong parasocial relationship with somebody. More than half of adults have a strong parasocial relationship with somebody. 40% of YouTubers said that creators understand them better than their friends. How is that even possible? Because the creator has no idea that the content creator has no idea that you even exist. But somehow the way that they're creating content is speaking to this person's need. And when you watch somebody, that repeated exposure, you begin to have an emotional connection with them. People are developing parasocial relationships online. If you are not online, it's not going to be with you. And this is straight from my dissertation. So if you want to learn more about it, I got 250 pages that'll put your butt to sleep. Cultivating parasocial relationships. There's 8 things that you can do to cultivate a parasocial relationship. First thing, post consistently. Post consistently. Whatever the cadence that you decide to do it every time without fail. One study found that the optimal rate of posting online was 2 posts every 3 days. If you do less than that, you're not accelerating the development of parasocial connection. If you do more than that, each individual post is not being fully effective. Because the algorithm's going to go, oh man, this person, which one do I show to people? If you post basically 4 or 5 times a week, then the algorithm is going to be pushing that out to the people that are really following you. Okay, so post consistently. And as a church, post at least once a week, no weeks off. Second, in terms of cultivating parasocial relationships, use direct address. When you're creating like short form video content or any video content, look into the camera and talk to the camera as if that's a person on the other side of the camera. The direct eye contact, there's a psychological phenomenon where the direct eye contact leads people to feel like they're known. And then also talking with them as if they're one person. So you don't get on and say, hey, everybody. It's like, hey, I'm so glad that you're here today. So talking one-on-one using direct address. Number 3, posting widely, at least on 2 different social media platforms in order to be effective. I'm surprised. There's someone that I've been following that I've run across her on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn. And sometimes it'll be the same post, but each time, even if it's the same post, I like the post because it's someone that I feel some affinity with. So I'm posting widely in order to hit people. Every social platform has a slightly different or a very different demographic. If you're trying to hit retirees, Facebook is great, not TikTok. If you're trying to hit Gen Z, TikTok is great, not Facebook. YouTube, 40% of YouTube users, 40% of videos on YouTube are watched by men between the ages of 18 and 35. If you want to hit young adult men, you got to be on YouTube. So picking at least a couple of places and posting there. The fourth thing is add value. I said this earlier. Create content that is speaking to somebody's felt need, a need that they feel. So make sure that, so you're not just posting, hey, this morning I got up and man, I discovered that I didn't have any soap in the shower and that was really a pain. I'd see you tomorrow. It's like, now that might be great. And that's how I feel sometimes spiritually, where I wake up and I'm like, where's the soap? Right? I don't know. Which leads actually to number 5, offer self-disclosure. Telling stories about yourself helps to accelerate the development of parasocial relationships. Embarrassing stories, negative self-disclosure accelerates it faster than positive self-disclosure. So telling you that I finished a PhD, that's self-disclosure. It'd be better for me to tell you about the class that I almost failed in my PhD program, because that's going to accelerate the parasocial connection. So the question is, are you becoming a community faith leader in your community? And so are you going to the ecumenical interfaith meetings? If you're in the digital space, you don't need to be connecting with people that you're not trying to reach in an in-person environment. But I will tell you that there are pastors who are intentionally cultivating parasocial relationships that are getting recognized in the community. Hey, are you that YouTube Bible guy? Are you posting that Hebrew stuff on Instagram? I've heard stories from people that I'm connected with that do this, where they're getting recognized in the community. There's a pastor in Missouri. He was out at a smoothie shop ordering a smoothie. This 18-year-old kid coming from behind the counter looked out, saw him, Hiram Ruster. And he just lit up. Are you that YouTube Bible guy? And he came out from behind the counter, got a picture with Hiram Ruster that he shared on social media. Here's the thing. Because he felt like he had a relationship with Hiram was able to have a spiritual conversation with him right out of the gate. Without any of the preamble, there was already trust. There was already a connection because of the repetition of Hiram doing short-form social media videos. And Hiram, in his case, he's actually posting these as paid ads, but they're just simply spiritual content. Okay, let's keep going. Offer self-disclosure. Be authentic. Be real. Don't try to be a persona that you're not. When somebody meets you in person, they need to feel like they already know you, not that you're somebody else online. So be authentic. Another one that I found that pastors have a harder time with this, and that's expressing positive feelings. YouTubers do this a lot. Like at the end of a video, there's these creators in Australia, How Ridiculous. And they do like crazy trick shots and stuff. At the end of every video, they're like, oh, we love you, 44 Club. I can't remember what I did. We love you guys. Thank you so much. And they're saying, I love you to people that they have no idea who these people are. But they are genuinely appreciative of these people for watching because they're monetizing this content. So it is real love. For pastors, I found have a harder time doing this. But here's the truth. If you're doing this and somebody's watching it, do you love them? As a pastor, I think the answer better be yes, more than anybody else. So expressing that, I love you guys. I'm cheering for you. What can I do to support you? Expressing positive feelings to people in your content. And then the last one, in terms of cultivating parasocial relationships, is inviting viewers to engage with the content. People who like, share, subscribe, follow, actually, the very act of doing that increases the parasocial connection. So we're talking about the progression phase. I have 6 examples I want to give you. So here's the progression. Somebody searches for Bible study on Google. It leads to a link to a website page for Bible studies that talks about the benefits of Bible study, lists times and locations of when a Bible study can happen. On that page, there's a newsletter sign up. Somebody signs up for that. They're now getting a weekly email newsletter, again, with benefits, times, and places. And because of that repeated exposure, eventually somebody decides to visit an in-person Bible study as a result. Okay? Don't take a picture yet. Let me give you the recipe for doing this one. First of all, what's required? You need to have Bible study groups in place. That's the first thing. You need a web page that talks about small groups. You need your weekly email newsletter. You need that newsletter sign up on the page about small groups, and then run geo-targeted Google ad for the keyword Bible study. This is what's required to be able to do this progression. That's an example of a progression. This is a funnel. Not everybody who searches for Bible study on Google is going to click on your link. Not everybody who goes to that page is going to sign up for the newsletter. Not everybody who signs up for the newsletter is going to end up coming. But each step, fewer and fewer, but if you do it right, people are going to be coming to your church as a result of a progression like that. Let's do another Google search progression. Let's do one where somebody does a Google search for the word Sabbath, and it takes them to a page with an article about Sabbath, the power of Sabbath rest. You could take a number of different approaches to it. I would take a felt need thing. In a world filled with weariness and labor, God gave us the most countercultural command to stop what you're doing every 7 days. Write an article like that and the benefits of Sabbath rest. Then you could offer a Bible study guide about Sabbath rest that somebody could request. And then when they request that Bible study guide, it triggers what we call a drip campaign with a daily email about Sabbath. And in each of those, you're inviting them to the upcoming Sabbath service. And because of that, it leads to somebody deciding to visit your Sabbath service. What's required? You need a web page with an article about Sabbath. You need a Bible study guide about Sabbath. You need to write daily emails about Sabbath, what we call a drip campaign. And then you create geo-targeted Google ad for the keyword Sabbath. That's another recipe for progression. Let's talk about one on social media. Here's the progression. You write some social media posts about finance. And you offer in those social media posts, hey, I've got this biblical financial blueprint for how to live a financially successful life. That takes people to a landing page where that blueprint is offered. And when somebody requests it, then you could send out daily messenger messages about finances. And as part of that, invite people to a Zoom Bible study. And then because of that repeated exposure, somebody comes to your Zoom Bible study. What's required? You got to have a Zoom Bible study on finances. You need to have a web landing page for your financial blueprint. You got to create that financial blueprint document, that PDF, whatever that is, and then write daily messenger messages about finances. And then you write some social posts about biblical finances and you run those. That's the recipe for that particular progression. Let's talk about one with short form video. You're going to create 60 to 90-second videos on social media about various topics. As part of that, you invite people to request an ebook on some topic. That ebook request form then triggers a drip campaign with daily emails on that book topic for 7 days. And then it converts into a weekly email newsletter after that, where again, there's an invitation, a very clear, very highly prominent invitation to visit the worship service. As a result, somebody decides to actually check out the worship service. What's required? You got to have your ebook, got to have a web landing page to request the ebook. You need to have your 7 emails on that book topic. You need your weekly newsletter, and then you need to be posting regular short form videos. That is the recipe. Another example, progression recipe for short form video. How about a Google business listing? If there's one thing that you should be doing in the visibility stage, it's make sure that your Google business listing for your church exists, because that's how you show up on Google Maps. And you can add some information in there. If you give a mug as a gift, you can actually say in your Google business listing, free mug when you come. Okay. So someone searches for church near me. The Google business listing for your church appears on that. It's got a website page, and in your Google business listing, you point not to your homepage, but to that web page specifically for guests. Because if somebody's looking, they're not a member. I mean, maybe, but send people, assume that they're a guest, and send people to that guest page, and then invite people to sign up for the weekly email newsletter. And in that email newsletter, you're inviting people to come. Repeated exposure leads to somebody actually coming. So what's required for this? You need a web page for your guests, you need your weekly newsletter, and then you need your Google business listing. That was pretty straightforward. I am so excited about this next one, Zoom Bible School. Here's the progression. You run social media ads inviting people to enroll in a Zoom Bible study class. That takes people to a sign-up form, which leads to email and text reminders about the upcoming Zoom class. When we actually did this, we ran the ad campaign for 8 weeks before the event, which is a horrendously long time to be inviting people to come to an event. But because we ran this guest nurturing campaign with email and text reminders reminding people to come, it ended up being a lot more effective. So then they'd come to the Zoom class. As a result of coming to the Zoom class, in that class, they're invited to an in-person Bible study. So what do you need for this? You need your Zoom Bible class. You need a web landing page to enroll people in that Zoom Bible school. You need email and text reminders leading up to the start date. And then you need email and text reminders about subsequent meetings. Once they're underway, you have, don't forget about this next one. There are people who have done every one of these that have been effective. I want to go down another rabbit trail, talk about accelerating this with generative AI. You cannot outsource the steeping yourself in the Bible. You need to be spending time in the Word. It needs to be integrating into your life. But when it comes to creating all this content, you have to write the social posts and the follow-up emails. You have to do all this stuff. You can use AI to accelerate the process. You don't outsource it completely. You use it as a partner to help draw you in, okay? So here's some tips. Okay, I asked the question, what are the 10 most pressing issues faced by young adults in Vancouver, Washington that I can write a Bible study guide to address? He gave me 10 ideas, and he actually went into a little bit of detail about each one. I picked one, and then I said, please create a blueprint Bible study guide that a young adult can use. I'll let you know when the slide is done so you can take pictures. Can use to deal with financial pressure and economic anxiety in Vancouver, Washington from a Seventh-day Adventist perspective, offer practical guidance to address this need from a biblical viewpoint. This should be a simple guide that a young adult could immediately put into practice. It wrote me some content. All right. Then I said, write me 10 social posts targeting young adults in Vancouver, Washington about financial pressure and economic anxiety with practical guidance. You want your social posts to add value, but then you offer the blueprint download as part of the message. It came back with 10 social posts, drafts. And then I said, and this is the last of this slide, write 7 brief daily follow-up messages I can send someone who requests to download this blueprint. In the last 3, invite them to join us at the next Sabbath service. Okay. So I went through and I created in about 10 minutes all of the drafts of all of the content for one of these progressions. then you can't just copy and paste. You need to go through word for word, make it your own voice, adjust the language. Don't just take it as it is. In fact, let's just talk some general rules for accelerating with generative AI. Use AI as a thought partner to help you generate ideas. Don't use it as the author. Do not blindly copy and paste. Edit the response to match your voice and your needs. Don't trust any references it provides. Confirm that they're real before citing them. I have some experienced ChatGPT users in here. It's amazing what it'll make up. It sure looks good. Okay, so those are 3 tips for accelerating with generative AI. Okay, let's remind ourselves, kind of recenter the goal of digital ministry: fully devoted disciple of Jesus, engaged in the life of the local church, a disciple making other disciples. Here's the thing. This pathway to discipleship doesn't stop once they are out of the digital space and into the real world. So you need to be intentional about creating opportunities. You need to be intentional about creating opportunities for people to make decisions after that. Jose Cortez once said, "Don't waste a perfectly good sermon by not asking for a decision." Last night, we heard Joanne Cortez talk about asking for decisions. You are using calls to action in the digital space to move people from initial exposure, initial meeting them, to your controlled repetition, to an in-person engagement. Once they're in person, that you're not done. Your goal is fully devoted disciple of Jesus, more and better disciples. So you need to make sure that that progression continues. You have clear next steps in your in person, and then use the digital communication tools to help progress those. But in person, always ask for a nudge. There's always a next step in someone's spiritual life. Always ask people to take that next step. Okay, so some possible calls to action: inviting people for Bible study, baptism, maybe like a next step class, or a new believers class, or whatever. Okay, does this work? Does the digital connection architecture make a meaningful difference in a local church? The answer is yes. Dr. Roscoe Shields, he created a series of progressions that followed the digital connection architecture. 18 baptisms from digital ministry in 1 year. These are 18 people who had no idea that the Sharon Church existed until he met them in the digital space, progressed through this, and it led them to baptism and engagement in the life of that church. Another pastor who's done this, Pastor Ben Orion, he had 12 baptisms from digital ministry in 1 year. He was using short form video. Dr. Shields did the financial blueprint one. That was his progression that I shared. Dr. Ben Orion or Pastor Ben Orion did the short form video progression. Pastor Annabelle Hansel had 21 baptisms from digital ministry in 1 year. People that he met in the digital space, that came to the Zoom Bible school, that ended up actually participating in the life of the church. This works. When it's done well, when it's done completely, this works. Okay, so the digital connection architecture, there's 5 layers, and your next step, whatever it is, you're building from the foundation up. So if you're missing a guest-friendly website, you got to work on that first. If you don't have a weekly email newsletter, you got to work on that first. Once you have your foundation in place, then decide, you don't have to do everything, but decide, am I going to do social media? Definitely, if you have a website, make sure that it's optimized for social, for search engines. You could do advertising, you could do social media posts, but something to get visibility. Once you have that in place, then work on consistency and progression and optimization. This is a tool to help you decide what is the most important next step that you can take, and then you need to take that next step. Remember that trust is built through repeated exposure. If you don't control the environment, you can't control the repetition. Last thing I just want to mention, how many of you have worked with SermonView in the past for like event marketing? Okay. So SermonView is focused on evangelism marketing, advertising for reaping meetings. We have a Bible study lead generation program where we guarantee 5 or 10 or 15 Bible study leads every single month over the course of the year. And you can learn more about those focused things at sermonview.com. Mission Click is our new division that is focused on the digital connection. And this is the division that we can help you build your website. We can help you set up and manage your social media. We can handle digital advertising. Real Faith is the short form video content program that we have. You can learn more about that from Mission Click.
Reflection is a big part of the Propel conference. And one thing that I hope that you take away from this particular conversation is that digital ministry is ultimately about people, not platforms. Every website visit, every email sign up, social media interaction, online conversation represents a real person whom God loves and is drawing closer to himself. Remember, the average American spends 48% of their waking hours in the digital space today. So what are you doing in the digital space? What are you doing to connect with people online? How are you implementing digital evangelism tactics? Before you move on with this presentation, I want you to take a moment to just think about what stood out for you. What was the big idea for you? How can you apply this big idea in your own ministry? One big idea that you do something with is better than 50 big ideas that you don't do anything with. So don't let this moment pass without thinking of a specific application in your own ministry. And when this episode finishes in another minute, I encourage you to pause for 5 or 10 minutes. Just turn off the audio player, let your mind wander, reflecting on what you just heard in this presentation. That reflection is a simple habit that can be surprisingly powerful for your ministry. And that's it for this episode. We'd love to hear from you. You can send an email to podcast@propelconference.org. And please mark your calendar for next year's Propel Conference coming to Gladstone, Oregon, April 25 to 28, 2027. Early bird registration is now open at propelconference.org. Special thanks to SermonView for sponsoring this episode. This has been the Propel Podcast, inspiration and innovation to grow your church. The Propel Podcast is produced by the SermonView crew, and the event recording services were provided by Adventist Learning Community. I'm Larry Witzel, wishing you God's richest blessing in your own evangelistic journey. Please join us again next time for another episode of the Propel Podcast.